3 days after the bombing of Hiroshima, a plutonium implosion-type nuclear weapon, nicknamed Fat Man, was loaded onto the B-29 bomber boxcar, stationed on Tinian Island in the northern Marinas, Pacific. Its mission, a second strike on Japan. On the morning of August 9, 1945, the crew flew to Kyushu. Just after 11:01 a.m., after a sudden break in the clouds, the bomb was released over Nagasaki. 43 seconds later at 11:02 a.m., it exploded. The bomb was about 40% more powerful than the atomic weapon dropped on Hiroshima. The devastation that followed down there is what we will focus on in this story.
This is Hypocenter Park. That monument behind me is where the second atomic bomb was dropped, 500 meters, 1,650 feet up, reducing the city of Nagasaki to rubble. In this episode, we'll tour the Hypocenter, look at the ruins, what remains today, and we'll also talk to survivors. What did they see? What did they feel? Their experience and the aftermath, and the important legacy of Nagasaki as the last place on Earth an atomic weapon was used in war.
Only in Japan.
Driving past JR Nagasaki Station on Kaigondori, Route 499, today looks like any other Japanese city. Morning commuters heading to work, streetcars rolling with traffic. But in 1945, Nagasaki was decimated. In the first hours, the city was devoid of sunshine, dark, engulfed in flames. There were few survivors. Many who did around the Hypocenter died hours later. The city would lay in rubble for many months, mostly deserted, unlivable. To get an informed view of the days after the atomic bombing, I met with a Nagasaki guide, Mac Kinoshita at Hypocenter Park, who showed me some of the key historical spots starting less than 100 meters away near a branch of the Urakami River. Ruins of August 9th preserved underground.
As you see, these are the tiles of the roof of Japanese houses. And you can also see some plates and some ironware that is used for. And also this black portion, the burnt ash of wood structure of the houses. So we presume this, about this level, is a ground level at the time of the bombing.
You can see tin cans, roofing, pottery, signs of life of that day wiped out.
All the survivors are very thirsty, extremely thirsty, because they are burnt not from the outside but from the inside also. So they rushed into the water, and as soon as they had water, with some shock, they almost soon died.
The water was...
So every river was filled with the human bodies.
Water, typically a source of life, was contaminated with radiation and toxins. The cries of "Mizu o kudasai," water please, are impossible to forget for survivors of that day. The Urakami riverbanks, the final resting place for so many, burned on the outside and inside. The nearby Peace Park fountain remembers that thirst with constantly flowing water. We'll take you on a tour around the Hypocenter showing the Shiroyama School, penitentiary, Urakami Cathedral, and one-legged Torii gate of Sanno Shrine, all within 1 kilometer or 0.62 miles. I met with Ujihara-san, who was 15 at the time of the bombing, now 95, who was a mobilized student working at Isahaya train station, 18.8 kilometers or 11.7 miles from the Hypocenter. He described what he saw and the events of that and the following days, starting at Isahaya Station.
そしてたまたまその11時2分外でしよったらものすごい光がねパーッと諫早長崎に落ちたのが諫早までもう先行中ですか光がもう目をくらむような光が来たんです。何だったろうかと思ってこうしよったら しばらくしたらドカーンという音がねして、
これピカドン、その
ピカドンじゃなく
ピカドン
てピカーッと光ってしばらくしてからドーンという音がしたの。
The flash came first, blinding, silent. Then, 55 seconds later, the sound wave struck Isahaya. Not thunder, not dynamite. A deafening, approximately 195 decibel boom. A sonic wall of pain that shattered glass and split the sky.
うわぁ、なんだったのか言って長崎の方面を見たら真っ黒い黒煙と、そしてキノコ雲中ですか、丸っとしたのが上がってきた。
広くなったですね、その雲。
もうやっぱりキノコ雲中ですか、それもあったけれども、あとはほらそこの現場の燃える黒煙がでもうそのキノコ雲がどれくらいもう消えてしまうぐらいに真っ黒、長崎の空はもう真っ黒になったんです。もう太陽ももう光はないように暗くなるような状況で、ものすごかったです。
This photo by Hiromichi Matsuda, taken 15 minutes after the bombing from the other side of Nagasaki Bay, about 6 miles 10 kilometers from the Hypocenter, shows the mushroom cloud above and the black smoke of Nagasaki burning. The Urakami Valley was entirely engulfed in dark smoke. To better understand the bomb dropped, I visited the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum near Hypocenter Park. An accurate replica of Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type nuclear weapon, is on display. Detonating in the air over the city for maximum destruction, a 200-meter wide fireball, obliterating buildings in a 1.6-kilometer radius. The Nagasaki bomb was 40% more powerful than the Hiroshima one, but geography contained much of the initial impact. The shockwave hit the hills and reflected inwards, sending secondary shockwaves back into the center, amplifying pressure, more lethal, more destructive. From the top of Mount Inasa, today one of the 3 most beautiful city viewpoints around Japan, you can see the geography of the city, the hills surrounding the valley, protecting villages outside, intensifying the destruction inside. The city was unprepared for what was to come. There were air raid shelters around the city, some very close to the Hypocenter by the Peace Park entrance today. On August 9th, residents fled here at 7:50 a.m. when air raid sirens went off. A B-29 reconnaissance plane was overhead. The all-clear was given at 8:30 a.m. Some stayed behind in the air raid shelters. At 11:02 a.m., the blast was almost directly overhead here. Some of those further inside survived, I was told. The air raid shelter tunnels are preserved today as another reminder of the war. There's really not a lot of room in there. Mac took me to the Hypocenter marker.
In that black box, name of the atomic bomb victims are stored in that box. And every year about 4,000 people
As survivors pass away, their name is added to the total, a reminder that people lived on with the effects of radiation and also the memories that could not be erased. What happened in Hiroshima 3 days earlier was on people's mind here when the flash and bang occurred.
こら広島に1週間前に落ちた新型爆弾がこれは長崎にまで落ちたんだなぁとみんな話しよった。そしたらやっぱり駅の本部からね、長崎浦上は全滅して列車は長崎はもうからは動かんと、道の奥から手前が列車は動くので、そういう方向でかなり長崎方面に負傷者が出てるから、それを貨物列車で運ぶので諫早で位置を下ろしてね、その被爆者を手当てをするような仕事をしなさいという。
A reminder that he's just 15. These are kids doing this job. Nothing could have prepared them for what was to come. The first atomic bomb rescue train, a C-51 steam locomotive, started runs less than 3 hours after the bombing, picking up victims in push operation mode towards the Hypocenter with the city still in flames. It returned with about 700 passengers and left Michino Station at 1:50 p.m. for Isahaya, which likely arrived within an hour, one of 4 rescue trains on the day of the bombing. The tracks would have been in bad shape, the area around Urakami Station still on fire, engulfed in thick black smoke. Ujihara-san was on the scene when those trains arrived. He'll describe his experience unloading the victims on those atomic bomb rescue trains, a horrific ordeal just hours after the bombing. Before that, let's learn more about those on the ground when the bomb hit in the city. Yokoyama-san was a child that day, had evacuated away from the city with grandparents while her family stayed in Nagasaki. She told the story of her family who lived and worked in the city center.
で、父がすぐそこのね、府知中学校ってあるんですよね。そこで被爆をしたんですよね。で、ここから 1.2 キロの地点です。校舎の中に入ってて、そして原爆が落とされた時には吹き飛ばされて、で運動場、校舎から運動場を越して崖下に落とされたんですね。でもうだからもうそこでもう父は意識不明になってて、でそのままの状態にいたところをもう死んでるだろうと思ってたのがなんか生きてるみたいだということで会社のね水の浦っていうところのね防空壕に連れて行かれて運ばれて。
Mizuno-Ura Park is about 2 kilometers away from the school, the other side of the city from Yokoyama-san's mother. Next, she talked about her mother and little sister 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles away from the Hypocenter.
ピカッと光ってでびっくりしてで急いで妹の上に覆いかぶさったそうなんです。そしたらもうドカーンと爆弾が原爆が落とされて、そして家の中はもうガラスが畳に刺さったりタンスがねタンスの引き出しが全部飛び出したり、妹を一応起こして、そして父がね向こうここだったからどうだったのかなって言って心配で仕方なかったけれど、まあその時はもうね行けなくって、その日は行けなくって。
Following the bomb, getting around the city looking for survivors was extraordinarily dangerous. This scene taken months later shows the devastation on the ground.
だから母は妹をおんぶして父を探しに何度も行くんだけど長崎駅から先になかなか行けなかったそうなんですね。もう火災が起こってるし、そして電線は垂れ下がってるしで危なくって。
This is a heavy industry plant that would have been between them. There wasn't really any road. All was covered in debris, few landmarks. Let's get a closer look at the damage done by the bomb that remains around the city center today. Do you see that object standing in the distance? The one-legged Torii at Sanno Shrine, 800 meters southeast of the Hypocenter, stands today as a reminder of the devastation from the blast. It's one of the important historical markers showing what Nagasaki went through generations ago. It remains as it did then. The force of the blast breaking it in half. The remains also symbolizing the city's strength. At Sanno Shrine, a minute away from here, the trees from that day live on, burned and scarred from the fires. Today, they look like this. They were early symbols of hope in the worst days. 500 meters northwest from the Hypocenter stands Urakami Cathedral, rebuilt on the same spot, but following the bomb, it looked like this. Just the outer walls remain standing. The upper part smashed to pieces, spread upon the ground in rubble. The dome atop the tower on its side. Reconstruction took approximately 14 years. Mac explained to me the devastation of the cathedral, but also told me about his own surprising personal connection to it decades earlier.
This picture includes myself,
Oh, really?
6 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
That's you?
And I was my mother over here took me to the sightseeing because her friend of college days visited Nagasaki, so she took her and she took me over also.
Despite being rebuilt, Urakami Cathedral still has many reminders of the day of the bombing. The North Bell Tower lies as it did that day below the new tower. It was ripped from the building and thrown into the river, which is now fenced off and preserved. Urakami Cathedral has become an important landmark in the reconstruction of Nagasaki. The Nagasaki Penitentiary sat where the current Peace Park is today, 300 meters north from the Hypocenter. 134 people died instantly. You can see the prison bars bent from the blast. The 25-centimeter thick reinforced concrete walls stood no chance to the force of the atomic bomb. Today, only the foundation of what once was remains. Just 500 meters or 1,600 feet west from the Hypocenter was Shiroyama Elementary School. The building was fortified to prevent earthquake damage, but suffered greatly from the close proximity of the bomb. It's believed only 47 of the approximately 1,400 students survived, a 3% survival rate. The structure may have still been standing, but took a lot of damage when you examine it more closely. It's still an elementary school today, so be mindful of the students around. The museum is to the side. Despite some ongoing repairs, it stands as it did after the bombing. Visitors can sign in and tour the preserved tower with exhibits and photos. Just walking around takes you back to 1945. The concrete walls and ceiling tell the story, burned and cracked, scarred from high-velocity debris. The walls today include local artwork in the aftermath of the bombing and photos with info on the building then and now, images of the city with maps, some photos of the staff and students lost that day. There's a model of the school after the bomb upstairs. The interior has been repaired to an extent, though some places have been left as is to remind visitors of the horrors inside the building that day.
The school were broken at their base.
The trees were forced down in the direction away from the blast, but one survived long after, until recently, and preserved inside the building to remember. The atomic bomb was more than just a blast. The damage to humans from radiation was often invisible beyond outer physical burns and blood. Yokoyama-san told me about her father and sister.
そしたらね、父の顔はもうパンパンに腫れて、体も腫れて、そしてまぶた垂れ下がって、垂れ塞がって、もう目も見えないように塞がってしまって、口はめくれて、で血のりはもうベタベタくっついてて、洋服にも血のりはベタベタくっついてて。でも本当にこの世の人とは思えないような、自分の夫とは思えないような様相をしてたそうですね。でだからもう多分助からないだろうと思ってたんだそうです。
She told me about her return to the city following the bombing.
おばあさんのもう門票を一生懸命握りしめてね。でこっちも怖いわけですよ。でなんか死の世界に入ったというか、死の世界というのがああいうところなのか分かりませんけどね、とにかく怖い、なんか怖いものが人を押し寄せてくるような。
Photographer Yamahata Yosuke was dispatched by the Japanese military the day of the bombing and took many images around the city that have become important historical records documenting the immediate aftermath of the atomic blast, capturing the human suffering and devastation with stark, haunting clarity. You can still see the rubble smoldering, smoke and fire. The deceased still lying where they were at 11:02 a.m. Survivors helping survivors. Victims trying to stay alive. Ujihara-san experienced the horror of the effects of the atomic bomb when victims started coming in on cargo freights.
もうやけどでね、もう夏の暑い日ですから、ほとんどがもうシャツ1枚ぐらいで仕事しよったんですね。ですからもう光が当たったところもうやけどがものすごい、もう女性のおっぱいみたいなやつが、
そのサイズ、
この皮膚がもう水ぶくれがして、そして中にはそれがもう裂けてダラッと落ちたやつ、もうそういうやけどの人が運ばれてきたのを、私たち諫早駅でそれをホームに下ろす作業をやったわけ。そしてもう本当ね、匂いは車内の中には今言ったような焼け臭い生臭い匂いがして、もう本当ね、これを見た瞬間に私も度肝を抜いて、もうこれが生き地獄じゃないかなというような感じを受けましたね。
そのイメージ、その日のイメージ、多分ずっと残ってますよね。
ね、もうね、
消すことができない。
そういうその状況というのは本当80年経った今でも脳裏にこびりついておりますよ。ですからもう忘れきらんですね、悲惨さっていうのは。放射線を私たちまで浴びるというようなことはもうと考えてもらわなかった。しかしやっぱり被爆した方々を扱った関係で我々までその放射線を浴びたというような後でそういう結果が分かったわけですね。
For decades, Hibakusha atomic bomb survivors hid their past to avoid discrimination. They were seen as genetically damaged, unlucky. Many were denied jobs, housing, marriage. Thus, they repressed their trauma, hid their stories, their struggles. The pain ran deeper than scars.
この原爆の放射線を受けたがゆえに、今度私が子供までその放射線の被害を受け、白血病という病気にかかったわけです。これですよ。
Ujihara-san showed me photos of his son Hiromichi, who passed away in September 1973. He was 7 years old. The tragedy continued for so many years after. Second-generation Hibakusha who suffered from cancer, leukemia, purpura, radiation-induced damage to blood vessels and organs.
これが父。
42年、戦争中だけど、原爆前。
原爆前。これが私。
Yokoyama-san is the baby in her mother's arms. Her family struggled greatly after the bomb, suffering from what is called atomic bomb disease.
これりっちゃん。
りっちゃん。
Her sister Ritsuko, who was with her mom in this city, was never the same after the day of the bombing. She spent most of her time sick, in hospitals, surgery, in pain, eventually going blind.
妹なんかもね、そうですけど、生まれて1歳4ヶ月の間だけしか健康な状態ではなかったんですよね。それからずっとでしょ、亡くなるまで。40年間。もう本当こんなひどいね、爆弾はないですよ。
At the Nagasaki City Peace Hall by the museum, I met with Mine-san, whose grandmother was 23 at the time of the bombing, now 103. She's sharing her story with the next generation. I wanted to learn about how the citizens of Nagasaki will continue the legacy of the Hibakusha when the voices gradually fade from time.
だから子どもたちにも教える時も「実際の声聞いたことありますか?」って言って「本当に貴重なことだよ」っていうふうにはお伝えして、で内容だけじゃなくて本当にあったことだって言ったとこをどう伝えるかなっていうことで、一つは私の講話の中には動画を収めていて、動画が一つやっぱり生ではないけど 本物の声で伝えられるからそれを入れて少しでもその本当にあったことだよっていうところの工夫というかそういうことでの伝え方をしてます。
私はちょうどこの日は畑に行っていましたんですよ。でおじいちゃんは上の山に今日記事に行って本当に B29 の音がしたからカッとで牛の草を担いでた時原爆でバーッとこう飛んできて原爆ってわからんもんだからそしてしばらくしたら長崎の空は真っ暗くなって
ちょうど10年前にぐらいかなに語ってるので11年前かなだから被爆70年後ぐらいに語ってます。
今こう覚えてる全部。
そうですね。だから大人になってからの体験なので。
Most survivors still alive today were quite young on that day, but it's been a life struggle, losing family, and their story has yet to be completed. Yokoyama-san got through the struggles focusing on the root cause.
あんたが悪いんじゃないんだよ、原爆が悪いんだよ、原爆を憎みなさいというふうに。
Don't hate the people, hate the bomb.
あの時だけではないんですよと、これだけではないんですよ。その後の生活もきちんと見てください。その後の被爆者の生き方も見てください。
もう本当ね、これを徹底してもらってみんなが核を使わないように戦争のない世界になるようにやっていかないということをね、みんなで協力して啓蒙してもらわないかんと思います。
Even today, speaking out takes courage. Through Nihon Hidankyo, survivors' voices endure. Honored with the 2024 Nobel Peace Prize, their message is a plea to disarm. The abolition of all nuclear weapons and a reminder that forgetting Nagasaki risks repeating it. Yokoyama-san was there at the ceremony to accept the Nobel Peace Prize with the group, wearing a special flower made for her by her sister.
Those stories are supposed to be so impactful so we don't forget what happened. On August 9th, the survivors, their families, the residents of Nagasaki, dignitaries from around the world, and the press come here to cover it so that we remember. The grandchildren and the great-grandchildren that have heard those stories will continue that message of peace for the future. I want to thank the Only in Japan community, you guys, for making this episode possible, to allow me the time to make this in a very meaningful way, as well as the city of Nagasaki and the volunteers who really came together to help me. It's a really difficult story to tell, but one that really needs to be told, in particular at this time, as those first-hand accounts are still around. If you liked it, hit that subscribe button and join me in another episode as I take you to every corner of this very amazing country. Mata ne.